A foggy morning settled over Seattle as a wealthy tech millionaire opened a letter that would change his life. His heart skipped when he read the words. 3 children carried his name, yet he had never known they existed. The shock deepened that very night at a glittering party. Across the room, he saw them, Lily, Chloe, and Noah, faces that mirrored his own. Beside them stood their mother, Natalie Brooks, his former love. Anger erupted in a storm of words, but life took a cruel turn when Lily collapsed from a severe asthma attack. In that moment, he was forced to choose between his billion-dollar empire and his role as a father. The choice became clear at a warm birthday gathering, where he stood before friends and family and publicly claimed his children as his own. Tears and laughter mingled in the air. How could a man who once chose ambition over love find redemption and rebuild a family from the ashes? This story carries a timeless message of forgiveness and patience, that unconditional love can heal every wound, and a second chance is always waiting for those brave enough to change. Morning in Seattle draped the city in a thin veil of fog, floating among glass towers that seemed to pierce the clouds. On the 42nd floor of Ward Innovations, Ethan Ward had just ended a video call with his European board of directors. A steaming espresso rested on his desk beside a thick stack of files for a new project worth hundreds of millions. He turned his chair toward the panoramic window. The city lay small beneath him, busy streets, bridges stretching over the deep blue waters of Puget Sound. It was the world he had spent nearly 3 decades conquering, a powerful tech empire, a reputation that echoed far and wide, and influence few could ever reach. Yet in exchange, he lived alone in a vast penthouse. No children's laughter, no warm family dinners around the table. A gentle knock pulled him from his thoughts. His assistant stepped in, holding a cream-colored envelope. "Mr. Ward, this came directly from Brooks and Associates. They asked that you read it immediately." Ethan's brows furrowed. That name stirred a memory he had long buried. He took the envelope, the rough paper suddenly heavy in his hands. Part of him wanted to leave it sealed, to let the past remain in the shadows. But curiosity, laced with unease, pushed him forward. He slid the opener through the flap. The faint scent of old paper and fresh ink rose as he unfolded several neatly creased pages, the Brooks and Associates logo stamped at the top. The first line struck him like a blow. "Mr. Ethan Ward, this notice concerns your rights and responsibilities regarding 3 minors, Lily Ward, Chloe Ward, and Noah Ward." His heart stumbled, as if someone had yanked a cord tied to it. He read slower, each word etched in fire. 3 minors. Ward. They bore his name, the name he had built his empire upon. The letter continued in painful detail. Their mother, Natalie Brooks, had raised them alone for 5 years, without a single dollar of support from him. She had tried many times to reach him, but all her attempts had been unsuccessful. The firm requested a meeting to discuss visitation, financial obligations, and legal matters concerning paternity. His grip tightened until his knuckles turned white. The hum of the air conditioner carried on, steady and soft. But to Ethan, the air felt thick and suffocating. Memories came rushing back. Natalie's smile in the afternoon sun, her voice echoing in that small cafe by the road. "If one day you ever want children." He had brushed her off, lost in endless flights across continents, late-night calls across time zones, billion-dollar deals he thought mattered more than anything else. He shot up and walked to the window. Down below, life carried on, commuters rushing, horns blaring in traffic. But for Ethan, time froze. 3 children, 5 years old, and he had known nothing. They had grown without him, unaware that a father even existed. A sharp thought cut through him. If I hadn't opened this envelope, would I have gone my entire life never knowing? Would I keep chasing meetings and contracts, while somewhere out there, my blood was growing up in silence? His phone buzzed on the desk. A reminder flashed for a meeting with Tokyo investors. He stared at it for several long seconds, then pressed cancel. For the first time in years, He skipped an essential call without a single excuse. Work, the thing that once consumed him, suddenly seemed small against the storm rising in his chest. He sat back in his leather chair, the letter spread across the desk. His lips moved softly as he whispered each name. Lily, Chloe, Noah. Strange, yet familiar, as if etched into him all along. He pictured them. Lily, with Natalie's soft brown hair dancing in the wind. Chloe, maybe with little glasses perched on her nose, lost in a book. Noah, laughing as he chased a ball across green grass. Just imagined shadows, but the ache they stirred felt real, like a loss too deep to measure. A decision began to take shape, steady and unstoppable, like a river carving its way to the sea. He couldn't bury this story again. No matter how badly he had failed, no matter what he'd missed, he had to know the truth. He had to meet them, to see with his own eyes the children fate had kept hidden. He picked up the phone, his voice calm but resolute. Cancel everything this afternoon. Find me Natalie Brooks's number. Whatever it takes, get it. Beyond the glass, the fog was breaking apart, thin rays of sunlight piercing the gray sky. But for Ethan Ward, a storm was only beginning. One not in the Seattle skyline, but in the depths of his heart, where years of silence were crashing into life. He knew from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The towers, the numbers, the empire. They all felt small compared to three names that now consumed him. Lily, Chloe, Noah, his children, his past, and now, his reckoning. 4 days after the letter from the lawyer's office upended his world, Ethan Ward stood before the tall mirror in the dressing room of his penthouse. His hands adjusted a midnight blue tie, while his reflection revealed a rare tension in his eyes. Tonight was the annual fundraising gala of Seattle's business elite at the Paramount Ballroom, an arena where he'd long been the star on magazine covers, fluent in handshakes and polished smiles. But this evening, Ethan wasn't here for contracts or reputation. He was here for Natalie Brooks. The chandeliers of the Paramount Ballroom glittered overhead, scattering crystal light across polished marble floors. Champagne glasses shimmered on silver trays, carried gracefully by servers weaving through the crowd. A soft piano melody drifted from the corner, blending with murmurs from men in tailored suits and women in sweeping gowns. To Ethan, this world had once been a stage where he thrived, his sharp speeches drawing every gaze, his image etched as a symbol of success. He entered wearing the same perfect social smile, yet his eyes scanned the crowd with unusual focus. He searched for one face, one figure from the past. Familiar ones passed by, longtime partners with rehearsed grins, local politicians nodding in recognition, ambitious young entrepreneurs eager to impress. None of them made his heart stumble, until, across the room near the auction display, a woman in an elegant navy gown leaned down to speak with 3 children. Her hair fell in soft waves against her shoulders, the chandelier's glow tracing the delicate lines of her face. Ethan froze, breath caught in his chest. Natalie Brooks. She still carried the same gentle sharpness he remembered from a decade ago, now layered with the quiet strength of a single mother. Beside her stood 3 children. Lily, the eldest, held a small paintbrush and watercolor set, brushing red and blue strokes across a page with a spark of joy in her eyes. Chloe clutched a glass star globe, peering into the constellations as though discovering the universe itself. And little Noah giggled as he hid a cookie behind his back, lost in a private game of mischief. The world around Ethan blurred. Only those 4 figures, Natalie and the children, remained painfully clear. In their faces, he saw fragments of himself. Lily's strong brows, Chloe's deep-set eyes, Noah's radiant grin, an echo of the smile he'd seen in old photographs of his youth. A rush of emotion surged through him, warm like fire, yet cutting deep like a blade. He moved slowly toward them, his leather shoes striking the marble with steady beats. Natalie looked up. For an instant, her eyes widened, as if dragged back into a memory she'd rather forget. Then her composure returned. Lips pressed tight, no polite smile, no social nod, only a cold, steady gaze that reminded Ethan of the silence and scars between them. "Hello, Natalie," Ethan said, voice low and steady, though his heart hammered. "Ethan." Her reply was clipped, her tone steady, but her hand instinctively rested on Lily's shoulder, a quiet gesture of protection. "They are..." His eyes flicked toward the children. The unfinished question hung heavy, though he already knew the answer in his gut. "Lily, Chloe, and Noah," Natalie said slowly, her voice even though her eyes stayed sharp. She bent toward the children, speaking gently. "Kids, say hello to Mr. Ward." 3 small pairs of eyes turned toward him. Lily offered a polite smile, distant yet respectful, the way a child greets a stranger. Chloe gave a faint nod, curiosity mixed with caution. Noah peeked from behind his mother's leg, eyes sparkling with both wonder and shyness. Ethan wanted to kneel to their level, to speak something warm, something familiar, but his throat closed. He didn't know where to begin. The air between him and Natalie tightened. She broke the silence first. "I didn't think you'd show up here." "I got the letter," Ethan replied, his eyes locked on the children, voice weighted. "And I realized, it's time I made things right." "Made things right?" Natalie's mouth curved in a smile stripped of joy. "Ethan, 5 years is a long time. What you missed can't be reclaimed. Walking into their lives only to walk out again will wound them more than if you'd stayed gone." Her words cut sharply and truthfully. Ethan swallowed, steadying his tone. "What if I told you I'm ready to change?" "Words are empty," Natalie answered firmly. "I need to see actions." Before he could respond, the MC's voice echoed from the stage, drawing the room's attention to the main auction. Natalie turned away, guiding her children into the crowd. Their figures faded beneath the warm golden lights. Ethan stood still, alone amid the grandeur, feeling as if the world had slipped through his grasp. Yet beneath the ache, a seed of resolve took root. No matter how hard, he would find a way to be part of their lives. From across the room, Lily suddenly glanced back. For a fleeting second, her gaze met his. That single moment was enough to stir something inside him, a door cracking open in his heart. He had finally met his children, and he knew the distance was more than years. It was trusted to be built from the ground up. Could he cross that wall? His journey had only just begun. That night, after the grand event at the Paramount Ballroom ended, Ethan Ward didn't rush back to his vast penthouse. Instead, he sat in his luxury car parked along the street, the engine humming steadily while his eyes wandered down the long avenues lit by Seattle's pale yellow street lamps. The feeling of loss pressed in on him, dull and aching, yet burning like fire inside. Natalie's silhouette, the 3 children by her side, haunted him, and Lily's fleeting smile from across the room felt like both a fragile ray of hope and a sharp reminder of the distance between them. If he relied only on chance encounters like this, nothing would ever change. He knew he had to act. He had to face the past if he wanted a future. 2 days later, Natalie agreed to meet him at a small cafe near her law office. It wasn't a warm invitation, more like an appointment set in stone, time and place delivered in a short message. Ethan arrived early, his heart pounding harder than it ever had before, though outwardly he wore the calm mask of a seasoned negotiator. Maple and Steam sat tucked on a quiet corner, its oak counters spilling the scent of fresh roasted coffee mixed with sweet waffles. Low pendant lights cast a cozy glow, although the tension in the air was palpable. Natalie was already seated. A cream sweater hugged her slender shoulders, her hair tied back to reveal a face both strong and tired. A cup of herbal tea steamed before her, the rising mist like a veil hiding the storm beneath. She didn't look up until he pulled out the chair across from her. When their eyes met, silence stretched for several long seconds. Even the clink of a spoon against a nearby glass sounded sharp, like an echo of the past between them. He leaned forward, offering a gentle, sincere smile. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Natalie didn't return the smile. Her gaze stayed firm, unflinching. She took a sip of tea, set the cup down, and waited. "I want to start over," Ethan said, his voice low but resolute, hands tightening slightly on the wooden table. "I know I missed everything. I have no excuse good enough, but I want to make it right. For you. And for the kids." "Start over?" Natalie repeated, her tone trembling, not from tenderness, but from anger held too long. She leaned in, her eyes flashing like fire. "Ethan, you disappeared. You changed your number and blocked all contact methods. I sat outside your house for hours, only to realize you'd moved. When I found out I was pregnant, I tried, God knows I tried, to call you dozens of times. And all I got was silence. Silence." Ethan lowered his head, eyes half closed as if shielding himself from the blade of her words. The memories came crashing back. Endless flights, grueling negotiations, the calls from Natalie he had brushed aside, convinced business mattered more. Every word she spoke felt like an indictment carved straight into him, each one cutting deeper. "Do you know?" Natalie pressed on, her voice rising now, shaking from years of buried emotion. "Every time Lily had an asthma attack in the middle of the night, every time Chloe's allergies sent her to the ER, or when Noah shook in fear during thunderstorms, I was alone, holding them, praying I was strong enough to get through it. I stayed up night after night, paid bills stacked higher than I could manage, and you weren't there. Not once." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight, breath unsteady. He reached as if to touch her hand in a silent plea, but Natalie pulled back instantly. Her eyes were steel. "If you want to step into their lives now, understand this. It's not a weekend visit. It's a real responsibility. And if you walk away again, there won't be another chance, Ethan." The air between them tightened like a wire stretched to the breaking point. Soft jazz drifted from the speakers, but it felt miles away. Ethan drew in a deep breath, his voice firm. "I won't leave. I can't live another day not knowing their laughter, not watching them grow. I know I have to prove it with actions, and I will. Whatever it takes." Natalie studied him for a long, heavy moment. Her eyes stayed skeptical, but somewhere within, a faint flicker stirred, perhaps a memory of the man she once loved so fiercely. She exhaled, her voice clearer now. "Fine, you'll see them, but on my terms." "Any terms?" Ethan replied without hesitation, clinging to the fragile thread of hope. She leaned closer, laying out the rules with precision, as if drafting a contract. "They'll know who you are, but I want you to begin as a family friend. No rushing, no forcing yourself on them. You'll learn to listen, to show up. And first of all, you'll cut back that schedule that stole them from you in the first place." Ethan nodded, and for the first time in his life, he was ready to let someone else set the course. Not his board, not investors, but Natalie, the woman he had lost. His chest swelled with both steel-hard resolve and a quiet, gnawing fear, like a traveler stepping onto a road with no clear end. They rose from the table. Natalie slipped her coat over her shoulders, preparing to leave. Ethan watched her go, his heart heavy yet lighter somehow. The first step had been taken, but the path ahead would be long, filled with trials he couldn't yet imagine. At the door, Natalie turned suddenly. Her voice softened, though it stayed firm. "Ethan." "Yes?" he answered, barely above a whisper. "Don't disappoint me and the kids again." Ethan gave a slight nod. In his eyes lay a silent vow, a promise he knew would demand his time, his strength, and his very heart. He had gained a fragile opening into his children's lives, but only by Natalie's rules. Beginning as a family friend, would he have the patience and endurance to rebuild the trust he'd shattered? His journey into fatherhood had only just begun, and every step ahead weighed heavier than the last. Ethan Ward had won a fragile chance to reach his children, but only under Natalie's strict conditions, beginning as nothing more than a family friend. Could he be patient enough, steady enough, to rebuild the trust he had broken? That question circled his mind for days after their meeting at Maple and Steam. Hope flickered inside him, yet unease remained. A man who had always controlled everything now had to learn patience, moving step by step. Ward innovations still demanded his attention, but Ethan began to shift. He canceled non-essential meetings, carving out time to think about how to approach the children without pressure. He understood. Fatherhood wasn't a quick deal to close, but a long journey that required sincerity and persistence. On Saturday morning, Seattle greeted him with a drizzle, raindrops dusting the windshield like fine powder, turning the streets into a soft haze. Ethan parked his gray SUV in front of the quiet neighborhood where Natalie and the kids lived. His luxury car looked out of place among the modest homes, each with wooden porches and hanging flower baskets swaying gently in the breeze. Natalie had written in her message, "Today, we'll just sit and talk in the backyard. No pressure, no big expectations." Ethan knew this wasn't a day to claim fatherhood. It was a gentle introduction, a stranger knocking on the edge of their world. He stepped out of the car, holding a box of homemade muffins. The scent of blueberries and butter drifted up faintly. When was the last time he'd cooked for anyone? He couldn't remember. But the thought of the kids smiling over something he made was enough to get him up at 5 a.m., fumbling through an online recipe. His heartbeat quickened, half excitement, half fear of failure. Natalie opened the door, her eyes guarded, though less cold than at the party. "You're early." "I didn't want to miss it," Ethan answered, awkward but genuine, determination shining in his eyes. The backyard was alive with fresh green grass and the gentle scent of lavender, a peaceful corner of the city that felt almost pastoral. Lily sat on a picnic blanket, coloring a half-finished drawing with bold, bright strokes. Chloe lay stretched on the grass, a thick atlas of space open in front of her, her eyes glowing with wonder at the universe. Noah worked intently on assembling a toy train track, the clink of plastic pieces echoing cheerfully. Ethan drew in a breath, steadied himself, and lowered onto the blanket with careful ease. "Hello, kids." He froze, realizing the slip, then quickly corrected. "Hello, everyone." Lily looked up, curiosity fixed on the box in his hands. "What's in there?" "Blueberry muffins. Baked them myself, but I can't promise they're as good as the bakeries," he said with a small laugh, opening the box as the sweet aroma lifted the tension. Noah darted over, eyes wide with delight as he popped the lid open like a treasure chest. Chloe kept pretending to study her book, though he noticed the slight curve of her lips, a secret smile she didn't want him to see. They sat in a circle, sharing muffins, whispering. Ethan listened more than he spoke. He asked Lily about her butterfly drawing and nodded as she explained each stroke of color. He leaned in as Chloe eagerly described Saturn's rings, her voice brimming with excitement. With Noah, he feigned terror as the toy train zipped across his foot, making the boy erupt in giggles. And in those moments, Ethan realized this was the part of life he'd once believed wasn't meant for him. Simple joys no billion-dollar deal could ever buy. His heart filled with a warmth he had never known. Later, as the kids played in a small fabric tent at the corner of the yard, Ethan sat with Natalie on the back porch, a glass of lemonade in his hand. "They don't seem to hate me," he said, half surprised, half relieved. "They don't hate anyone," Natalie replied softly, watching the children with a tender smile. "They just need time to believe you'll stay." Ethan nodded, hearing again her words at the cafe. This is responsibility. There won't be another chance. He knew if he genuinely wanted to be in their lives, he had to start small and keep showing up. That evening, back in his penthouse, he reopened his digital calendar. The glow of the screen lit his pensive face as he reviewed each meeting, each trip. Slowly, he began crossing out what wasn't essential. In their place, he wrote new entries. Saturday afternoon, visit the kids. Wednesday, call Lily, Chloe, Noah. His assistant was baffled, but to Ethan, this was the most critical investment he would ever make. Day by day, the small gestures became habits. He sent Lily a new set of colored pencils with a note. Can't wait to see the finished butterfly. He bought Chloe a science kit to match her curiosity, and for Noah, a rocket-shaped nightlight to ease his fear of storms. Not every moment went smoothly. Some days Noah ignored him, sulking with his back turned. Once, Chloe asked bluntly, "If you're our dad, why weren't you here before?" The question left Ethan silent, his chest aching like a needle pressed deep. But he answered with honesty, his voice low and steady. "Because I was wrong, and I'm trying to fix it. I can't change the past, but I want to build the present and future with you." Natalie watched from a distance, never intervening. Her eyes slowly softened, the sharp suspicion fading into a faint, cautious trust. Then one evening, Ethan's phone lit up with a message from her. "This Friday, the school has a play, The Three Little Pigs. If you'd like, you can come." Just one line, but to him, it was a breakthrough, an invitation into their world. He read it again and again, hope surging through him, before typing his reply. "I'll be there. Which row?" Ethan had taken his first steps into his children's lives, and now, the invitation to the school play offered him his first real chance to stand in their critical moments. Would he rise to it, or would new challenges test him again? The question lingered in Ethan's mind for days as he read and reread Natalie's message. Her follow-up came quickly. "Third row on the left. Don't stand up or distract them while they're on stage." The reminder made him smile. There was still distance, but at least she had opened the door. He spent the week preparing himself, canceling an unnecessary meeting, imagining the laughter of children, the stage lights, and the small faces of Lily, Chloe, and Noah. By Friday afternoon, Seattle's sky glowed with a soft golden hue. The last rays of the sun filtered through fiery red maple leaves, scattering gently along the streets. Ethan slowed as the sign for Pine Hill Elementary came into view, his heartbeat quickening. Today wasn't about boardrooms or million-dollar contracts. The stakes felt far higher. It was about being accepted by his children. Parking the car, he drew in a deep breath, reminding himself of Natalie's words. This wasn't a stage for power or wealth. It was a test of humility, a father learning simply to be present. The school auditorium buzzed with murmuring parents and bursts of children's laughter from behind the crimson velvet curtain. The air smelled of new poster paint, acrylic crafts, and sweet buttered popcorn. It wrapped the room in warmth and nostalgia, stirring childhood memories Ethan had long lost. He slipped into the third row on the left, just as instructed. His eyes scanned the crowd until he saw Natalie seated up front. She glanced back briefly, then gave a slight nod. Not warmth, not yet, but no longer the icy stare he had once known. That alone felt like progress, and he sat down with quiet gratitude. The opening music played, and the curtain slowly parted, revealing a stage bright with handmade props. The three little pigs stepped out in knitted costumes, pink snouts bobbing as the audience burst into laughter. Lily, as the second pig, stood center stage, her eyes shining as she delivered her lines in a clear, steady voice. "Brothers, we must build our houses strong." Chloe narrated with the poise of a young broadcaster, script book firm in her hands, her voice measured and confident. And Noah, though not on stage, sat proudly with the cheer squad, waving frantically the moment he spotted Ethan, his grin stretching wide. Ethan lifted his hand in a small, quick wave, careful not to draw attention. Yet that one wave from Noah felt like a thread weaving him into their world. Warmth spread through his chest. He leaned forward, watching Lily and Chloe with rising pride, and a sting of regret for the moments he had missed. When Lily finished her big line, her eyes flicked down to the third row. For a heartbeat, father and daughter locked eyes. Ethan pressed his hand to his chest, smiling and nodding gently in silent encouragement. Lily's lips pressed together, her cheeks pink with emotion, before she continued her part with new confidence. The play ended to a roar of applause as the curtain swept closed. Children poured out to find their parents, laughter filling every corner. Ethan rose and moved slowly toward the backstage area, careful not to draw attention. He spotted Natalie helping Lily out of her pig costume, Chloe clutching her thick script with tired pride, and Noah showing off his best cheerleader badge to anyone who would listen. Ethan crouched to Lily's level, his voice tender. "Lily, you were wonderful up there today. I'm proud of you." She looked up, torn between shyness and joy. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan," she whispered, before running to Chloe, gushing that Mr. Ethan saw me on stage. From a distance, Natalie watched, the corners of her mouth softening into a rare smile. She turned toward him. "You kept your word. No showy gestures, no pressure on them." "I just wanted them to know I was here, no matter where I sit," Ethan replied quietly, sincerity glinting in his eyes. On his way out, he was stopped by Lily and Chloe's teacher, a warm, middle-aged woman who shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Ward, I've heard about you from Natalie. I just want to say, it's never too late to be a good father." Her words sealed his resolve, steadying him as he walked out beneath the falling maple leaves. That night, in his silent penthouse, Ethan opened his laptop, not for financial reports or late-night emails, but to search 10 ways to help kids overcome fear. He knew Noah still dreaded thunderstorms, and next week's forecast promised heavy rain. He made notes to buy watercolors for Lily and a small telescope for Chloe, little things to prove his presence. On his desk lay the play ticket Natalie had sent. He placed it carefully into a wooden keepsake box. To anyone else, it was just paper. To Ethan, it was the first gift he had ever received from his children, even if indirectly, more valuable than any contract he had ever signed. Ethan had taken his first real step into their essential moments, but he didn't yet realize the greater trial waiting ahead. Soon, he would have to face not just his past, but the fierce resistance of family members who had witnessed him abandon Natalie and who would not easily accept his return. After the school play at Pine Hill, Ethan felt a sense of hope rising inside him, though unease lingered. His daughter's teacher's words still echoed in his mind. It's never too late to be a good father. In the days that followed, he doubled down on his presence, messaging Natalie about the kids' schedules, buying new science books for Chloe, and planning the next visit. He knew this journey wasn't just about fun afternoons. It was about rebuilding trust piece by piece, where even the most minor setback could undo everything. On a bright Sunday morning, Green Lake Park shimmered in early spring light. Colorful kites soared across the deep blue sky, and children's laughter carried over the expansive green lawn. Ethan chose this place for their next meeting, just as Natalie had suggested. An open space, casual and free, where things could unfold naturally. He arrived early, spreading a picnic blanket under the shade of a broad maple. On it, he placed a box of butter cookies he'd baked late the night before, a few pastel balloons, and a Jenga set he thought the kids would enjoy. Today, he wanted everything light and easy, no pressure, only hours of play that would speak more than words ever could. At 10, Natalie pulled up with the children. Lily, Chloe, and Noah bolted toward the blanket, laughter spilling into the warm breeze, easing Ethan's nerves. He joined Noah in stacking Jenga blocks, listened as Chloe described her solar system project, and praised Lily's new drawing of a kite in flight, its colors as vivid as the ones above them. For a while, it felt almost whole, a family rhythm forming, warming him in ways he hadn't felt in years. Until a voice, sharp and familiar, cut through the air. "Ethan, what exactly are you doing here?" He turned, his heart stumbling. His parents, Margaret and Henry Ward, were striding toward him, their faces as cold and unmoving as stone. Margaret wore a tailored gray dress with a flowered hat perched neatly. Henry stood tall, polished as ever, his silver cane glinting in the sun. They must have been watching from a distance, and now they stood before him, eyes heavy with judgment. "We need to speak privately," Margaret said, her tone crisp as ice, her gaze sweeping over Natalie and the children. Ethan rose from the blanket, fighting to steady his voice. Natalie instinctively stepped closer to the kids, her stance protective, like a shield. Mom, Dad, this is Natalie Brooks, and these are my children. Margaret's eyes flicked across Natalie with thin disdain, then rested on the children as if they were items to be appraised. Ethan, you can't simply entangle yourself in this mess. You have a reputation, a company, a legacy to protect. What do you think happens if the press finds out? They'll dig, they'll scandalize, and everything you've built will crumble. Heat rushed to Ethan's face. Anger churned with the old ache of years spent living under their expectations, sacrificing love for the image of success. This isn't a mess. This is my family. Family? Henry's voice cut in, deep and commanding, the same voice he'd once used to lead boardroom debates. You weren't there from the beginning. Walking back in now only disrupts them, and yourself. We all remember when you abandoned Natalie. And now you believe you can return, as if nothing happened? That's selfish, Ethan. Natalie stepped forward, her tone calm but edged like a blade. Mr. and Mrs. Ward, I don't need your approval. I raised them alone for 5 years, and would continue to do so, if I had to. But Ethan has the right to know his children, and to be their father, if he's truly willing to stay. This isn't about legacy or image. It's about them. Margaret let out a sharp laugh, her voice rising. You think you can raise Ward children? We have standards, traditions. They deserve a world worthy of their name, not one built on secrecy and scraps. Enough, Ethan broke in, his voice firm, stronger than ever before. He no longer sounded like the obedient son, but a father defending his ground. This isn't about traditions or image. This is about Lily, Chloe, and Noah. And I will not let anyone, not even you, harm them in the name of reputation. For a moment, the park seemed to fall still. The rustling maple leaves above sounded louder, sharper. Ethan locked eyes with his parents for the first time in his life, without flinching or compromising. If you want to protect appearances, do it without trampling my children's happiness. I'm choosing to stand with them, not to prove anything to the press, but because I love them. Margaret's lips pressed tight, ready to fire back. But Henry laid a hand on her shoulder, his gaze heavy, carrying both surprise and, perhaps, a trace of reluctant respect. Without another word, they turned and walked away, their figures receding down the park's winding path. Ethan turned back. Natalie still sat close beside the children, whispering comfort, a fortress of calm around them. He sank back onto the blanket, picking up the Jenga blocks where they had left off. Noah handed him a piece with a bright grin, as if nothing had happened. Your turn. Ethan smiled, warmth flooding his chest, washing away the sting of confrontation. He realized the most brutal battles weren't against the media or the boardroom, but against the weight of prejudice within his own family. And today, he had won an important round, not for himself, but for his children. Ethan had stood up to his parents to protect them, but the storm was far from over. The next challenge would come when he took the step of finding a new home, close to Natalie, and closer still to the lives he longed to be part of. After the tense encounter at Green Lake Park, Ethan felt a new strength rising in him. Yet he also knew words alone weren't enough. He needed action, tangible proof of his commitment. In the days that followed, he searched for a home. Not the kind of lavish penthouse he was used to, but something warm and close to Natalie and the kids. The decision stirred both excitement and fear. Would Natalie see it as a step toward them, or an intrusion? Still, Ethan understood. To truly be part of their lives, he had to begin with everyday change. A week later, he drove down a quiet street shaded by fresh spring maples, the Seattle air carrying the scent of cut grass. He stopped before a 2-story cream-colored house with a wide porch, a wooden swing, and flower baskets swaying gently in the breeze. From here, Natalie's home was less than a 3-minute walk, close enough to be present, yet far enough to respect her space. Holding the new keys in his hand, hope surged through him. This wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of transformation, from a lonely man in a tech empire to a father willing to live close to his children. Inside, the home felt worlds apart from the sleek, cold penthouse he once called his own. Hardwood floors gleamed in the soft sunlight pouring through the expansive windows. The spacious living room had enough room for 3 children to run free. An interior designer had shaped it into a place made for kids. A reading nook with shelves filled low with picture books and science titles. A playroom organized with toys, and 3 small bedrooms tailored for each child. Lily's room had an easel and watercolor set ready on the wall. Chloe's room was lined with books on space and a small telescope by the window. Noah's room held a bright red race car bed and neatly stacked building sets. On the day he received the keys, Ethan invited Natalie and the children to visit. His voice trembled slightly on the phone. When they arrived, Lily's eyes widened at the sight of the art wall. She touched the new brushes as if they couldn't be real. Chloe rushed to the reading corner, flipping open a small encyclopedia on planets, her eyes sparkling. Noah squealed at the race car bed and leapt onto the mattress, bouncing with glee. "You did all this? For us?" Lily asked softly, her round eyes searching his face. "Not just for today," Ethan said, kneeling to her height, his voice steady and warm. "But so that whenever you come here, it feels like home." Natalie stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She didn't speak, but her eyes lost some of their usual caution. There was surprise there, and maybe the faintest hint of gratitude. That afternoon, as Natalie prepared to leave, Lily's sudden voice broke the moment. "Mom, can we stay here tonight? Please?" The room fell silent. Ethan's heart pounded as he met Natalie's gaze. She hesitated, glancing at the children, then sighed. "Only tonight, and if anything happens, you call me right away." "I promise," Ethan said firmly, gratitude welling in his chest. Their first night began with laughter. All 4 of them cooked dinner together, a simple pasta with tomato sauce, but filled with warmth. Noah spilled half a box of noodles on the polished floor and laughed as Ethan scrambled to pick them up. Lily sneaked extra cheese into the pot. Chloe timed the boiling water like a scientist counting down a launch, making everyone laugh until their sides hurt. Standing in that lit-up kitchen, clumsy with a boiling pot yet surrounded by joy, Ethan felt something he'd never known before. This was family. These were the moments he had once thrown away. But as the clock struck 9, the real test of fatherhood began. Lily wheezed, her asthma flaring lightly, her small face flushed. Ethan remembered Natalie's instructions. He grabbed the inhaler from her bag, sat by her bedside, and rubbed her back gently until her breathing steadied. "Slow breaths, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice instinctively tender. From the next room came a startled cry. Noah had woken to the sound of wind rattling the window, thunder rolling far in the night sky. Ethan hurried over, flicked on the rocket-shaped nightlight, and told him a story of a brave astronaut crossing a storm in space. His calm voice and gentle hand in Noah's hair carried the boy back into giggles, then into sleep. Meanwhile, Chloe refused to turn off her lamp, determined to finish a chapter about the solar system. Ethan sat beside her, pretending to read along, until her head finally drooped against his shoulder. The book slipped from her hands onto the floor, and she breathed evenly at last. When all 3 were settled, Ethan stepped into the hallway. The house was quiet except for soft rain tapping against the roof. He leaned against the wall, a tired but content smile spreading across his face. For the first time in years, he felt in the right place, not in a high-rise office or on a plane, but here, with the steady breaths of his children filling the night. At dawn, he woke to the sound of small footsteps downstairs. Noah was struggling with a jar of strawberry jam, his little hands fumbling against the lid. Ethan helped him twist it open, and together they sat at the kitchen table with toast, sunlight pouring through the window. It was a simple moment, but it carried the weight of a vow, unspoken, yet clear. He would be here, every morning, every night, no matter what came. Ethan had made it through the first night with his children, facing small but meaningful trials. Yet he didn't know the greater test that lay ahead, a sudden health crisis that would force him to choose, once and for all, between work and family. After that night, Ethan felt a quiet joy settle over him, but he also realized fatherhood demanded constant readiness. The days that followed were a fragile balance. He still ran ward innovations remotely, but his priorities shifted, calling Natalie to check on Lily, sending new books to Chloe, and planning a weekend picnic. The new house nearby became the place he longed for most, filled with Noah's laughter that reminded him of everything he'd missed. Yet peace never lasted long, and in his heart, he carried a steady worry over Lily's fragile health. He had seen the warning signs in her mild asthma attacks. On Wednesday afternoon, Seattle's sky hung low and gray, heavy clouds pressing down as if to warn of a storm. Ethan had just wrapped up a call with the Singapore branch. His voice still echoed in the study of his new house. Revenue charts and expansion plans lingered in his mind when his phone began to buzz again and again. He frowned, then saw the caller. Natalie. His heart lurched. Calls from her at odd hours usually meant trouble. Ethan, it's Lily. Natalie's voice trembled through the line, and he sat up straight. She's having a severe asthma attack. I'm taking her to Seattle Children's. She didn't finish. Ethan was already grabbing his keys, racing out of the office. His heart pounded like a war drum. I'm on my way, he shouted, before the call even ended. Rain slammed against the windshield as he sped through traffic, wipers fighting to clear the blur. His mind filled with images, Lily gasping for breath, tiny hands clutching her inhaler, eyes wide with fear. And he was not there. But this time was different. This time, nothing would keep him away. He screeched to a stop outside the ER at Seattle Children's, barely noticing the guard's startled glance as he bolted inside. The hallway smelled of antiseptic. Monitors beeped in a steady rhythm, and tension pressed down on every breath. He found Natalie in the waiting area, her eyes swollen, her hands clenched tightly on her lap. Fear and exhaustion etched her face, the look of a mother who had borne this fight alone too many times. Where is she? Ethan asked, breathless, dropping into the seat beside her. Inside. The doctors are working on her. They said, this time it's worse than usual, Natalie whispered, her voice tight but holding back tears. Ethan moved to the glass window of the treatment room. Lily lay small and pale beneath the harsh neon light, an oxygen mask covering her face. Her tiny hand trembled on the white blanket with each strained breath. The sight pierced him, each second a silent accusation for the years he had been absent. He returned to Natalie's side, clasping her hands without a word. For the first time, she didn't pull away. Maybe because in that moment, she needed an anchor as much as he did. Half an hour later, a doctor emerged, pulling off his mask. His voice was professional, but kind. The attack is under control now, but she'll need to stay overnight for monitoring. Both of you should prepare yourselves. If her environment and routines don't change, the attacks may return. Ethan nodded, relief washing through him, though resolve burned even stronger. He stepped inside and sat beside Lily's bed, brushing the damp hair from her forehead. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but searching. Mr. Ethan, you're here? She whispered. I'll always be here, he said, squeezing her hand gently, his voice steady and full of love. Rest now. You'll be okay. He stayed by her side for hours, watching every rise and fall of her chest, every flicker on the monitor. When she finally drifted into deep sleep, Ethan pulled out his phone and typed an email to the Ward Innovations Board. Effective tomorrow, I will step back from all executive duties. The deputy director will assume operations. Reason: family. The decision came easier than he ever expected. It felt like the only choice that mattered. He would not let work devour him again. Later that night, the hall lights cast long shadows through the hospital window. Ethan's reflection stretched across the cold tile floor as Natalie entered, carrying 2 paper cups of hot coffee. You don't have to stay all night, she said softly. I want to, Ethan replied, meeting her eyes with a new steadiness. Not just tonight. Natalie paused, then gave a faint nod. She sat beside him, both of them watching Lily sleep as the monitor beeped steadily and surely. For the first time in years, the old walls of resentment faded, replaced by a fragile unity. Two parents bound by the same vow to protect their child. By morning, Lily stirred awake, her smile weak but bright. She whispered, "I want to come back here again. But not because I'm sick. I want Mr. Ethan to tell me a bedtime story." Ethan laughed softly, feeling a missing piece of his heart slide back into place. The fear of the night before gave way to hope, carried in her innocent eyes. After that night in the hospital, Ethan realized he no longer just wanted to be a father. He was ready to give up everything else to become one truly. That choice would soon bring him to a turning point with Natalie and the children, one that would change their lives forever. In the days after Lily left the hospital, Ethan couldn't shake the image of her gasping for breath in the emergency room. However, that fear soon gave way to determination. He officially informed the Ward Innovations Board that he was stepping back, retaining only an advisory role. Video meetings became fewer, and he used the extra time to visit Natalie's house, fixing leaky pipes, reading bedtime stories to Noah, or simply being there. Natalie noticed. Though she didn't fully open her heart, the constant wariness in her eyes softened, replaced by the faintest trace of trust. 3 days after Lily's discharge, the Seattle sky broke open in sunlight after weeks of rain. Warm beams poured through Natalie's living room window, painting golden streaks across the wood floor. Ethan sat on the rug, helping Noah piece together a new train set, the plastic tracks clattering under his small hands. Nearby, Lily and Chloe sat at the table, coloring family portraits in bright crayon strokes, their giggles blending with the scratch of wax on paper. On Lily's sheet, Ethan saw 4 figures standing together beneath a vast blue sky: himself, Natalie, Lily, Chloe, and Noah. At the bottom, she had carefully printed in block letters, "Ward Brooks family." Ethan froze, his chest tightening with emotion. Not just Ward, the name he had built his empire on. Not only Brooks, the one Natalie had carried alone for 5 years, but both names, joined together by a child's simple hand. A reminder that family was more than blood. It was something built every single day. That afternoon, Natalie invited him onto the back porch, where lavender from the garden drifted on the breeze. She poured 2 mugs of herbal tea, steam curling softly between them. "I can see you've cut back on work," she said. "I handed over operations. I'm only advising now," Ethan replied, his gaze steady on the quiet street beyond. "I don't want to miss another day." Natalie sipped her tea, silent for a moment, then softly, "I don't forget the past, Ethan. But I see you trying, and the kids. They're starting to believe in you." "I won't let them down," Ethan said, meeting her eyes. His voice dropped to a tender vow. "And I won't let you down either." A small smile touched Natalie's lips. Not complete forgiveness, not yet, but enough for Ethan to know he was on the right path. Together, they began a meaningful but straightforward family schedule. Tuesdays, Ethan picked up the kids from school, helped with homework, and cooked dinner at Natalie's. Thursdays, Natalie brought them to Ethan's house for supper, where he made warm, simple meals. Weekends, they all went to the park or science museum, where Chloe's curiosity could run free. The coordination was clumsy at first. One night, Ethan brought home pizza, forgetting Lily's cheese allergy, leaving her with a separate plate. Another time, Natalie planned a camping trip, overlooking Noah's fear of sleeping outdoors, which ended in tears. Yet instead of blame, they adjusted. Ethan learned to call Natalie before planning meals or outings, and she began trusting his judgment with the little details. One evening, when Ethan returned the kids, he saw his parents' car parked outside. Margaret and Henry Ward sat in Natalie's living room, their expressions serious but less severe than at the park. Ethan braced himself, his hands clenched for another battle, but Noah bounded in, proudly showing Margaret his train set. To everyone's surprise, she laughed. Chloe held out her solar system drawing to Henry, explaining each planet with glowing eyes. Ethan stood back, stunned as the walls of prejudice cracked. Margaret placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice softer than he'd heard in years. "They're wonderful children, Ethan. Perhaps we were wrong to think otherwise." Henry nodded slowly. No speech, no lecture. But that nod was enough. A quiet admission from the father who had once taught him that success was everything. Another night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan and Natalie sat on the porch swing. The yellow glow from the living room spilled across the lawn, crickets humming in the stillness. Natalie gazed at the star-filled sky, then turned to him. "Ethan, we'll never go back to what we were, but I think we can be a team, raising them, together." "A team," Ethan repeated, his voice warm, carrying the weight of a promise this time, not just words. In that moment, no contract was needed, no grand declarations. Only trust, slowly pieced back together, like Lily's drawing, simple, yet strong. The family was finding its rhythm, but one final milestone remained. A moment of truth, when Ethan would stand before everyone and declare openly, without hesitation, that Lily, Chloe, and Noah were his children, no matter what the past had held. In the months after Lily's crisis, Ethan held on to the new rhythm of life. Family time became a habit he couldn't imagine living without. He and Natalie worked smoothly together, sharing the little moments, reading to Noah at night, or park trips where Chloe explained constellations with the seriousness of a tiny scientist. His parents, Margaret and Henry, began to visit more often. Their short but warm visits felt like unspoken approval of their son's change. Ethan felt hope rise in him, though he waited for the perfect moment to make everything public, for himself, but more for his children. He wanted them to know, without a shadow of doubt, that they were fully acknowledged and never hidden again. 1 year after that life-altering letter, Seattle's sky was apparent, bright and cloudless, as if nature itself blessed their long journey. Outside the Willow garden, the restaurant where Ethan first met Natalie and the children, balloons framed the entrance in a colorful arch. A large sign read, "Happy 6th birthday, Lily, Chloe, and Noah." The choice of venue was no accident. This was the place of their beginning, where shock had given way to joy. Inside, the air was filled not with the formal tone of the business galas Ethan once knew, but with children's laughter echoing through the hall. The smell of sweet cakes blended with playful music. Servers in aprons printed with the 3 little pigs, a nod to last year's school play, moved gracefully between tables stacked with frosted cupcakes, fresh juice, and piles of gifts wrapped in shimmering paper. Ethan stood at the door, wearing a plain white shirt instead of a tailored suit. In his hands were 3 small, carefully wrapped boxes. He spotted Natalie chatting with other parents in the corner. She wore a soft blue dress, her face calm and radiant, the picture of a mother who had finally found balance after years of carrying the weight alone. On a small stage, the children were busy with a contest to see who could blow the biggest bubble. Lily leaned in, focused like an artist finishing her painting. Chloe explained her bubble formula to Noah with scientific seriousness. Their giggles filled the room. Ethan's laughter joined theirs as he walked up to pull them into his arms. These were the children he once didn't know existed, now the center of his world. When the MC called for attention, Ethan stepped onto the stage with steady steps. In his hand was a folder from Brooks and Associates. He glanced at his parents in the front row. Margaret's eyes glowed with pride, and Henry gave a quiet nod of encouragement. "Thank you all for being here today," Ethan began, his voice measured and heartfelt. "A year ago, I discovered I had 3 treasures I had missed for the first 5 years of their lives. Today, I'm not just celebrating their birthday. I want to acknowledge before everyone here, they are my children." He signed the papers before him and handed them to the attorney. His hand trembled with emotion. Applause thundered through the room, mingled with cheers from parents and friends. Lily ran into his arms, tears in her eyes. "Daddy!" Chloe hugged her gift tight, grinning. Noah, innocent as ever, asked, "So, can I call you Dad now?" Ethan pulled him close, his voice breaking. "From today, and forever." The party went on with laughter and games. Margaret adjusted Lily's paper crown, whispering, "Sweetheart, I'm so proud of you." Henry helped Noah build a towering Lego castle, laughing at the wobbling structure. Natalie and Ethan cut the cake together, their hands brushing lightly, a simple, natural gesture. Photos were snapped, not for headlines or display, but for the family's own enjoyment. Once impossible, these moments were now a warm reality. As the evening wound down, Ethan stepped onto the terrace. The sunset painted the lake gold, the breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass. Natalie joined him, shoulder to shoulder, the air between them finally easy and accurate. "You did it," she said softly, gratitude in her voice. "No," Ethan smiled, turning toward her. "We did it. Moreover, the kids did it. They taught me something I never understood in 45 years. Real success isn't measured in numbers on a balance sheet, but in the love and trust we hold in the eyes of those we love." Natalie said nothing, only looked at him with gentleness. In the glow of sunset, the distance between them disappeared, replaced by a bond built from patience and forgiveness. Then the children came running out, each holding one of his hands, the other hand clasped with Natalie's. Together, the five of them walked along the stone path, their shadows stretching long in the golden light. A perfect picture of reunion. Family doesn't always begin with a perfect story. Sometimes it's rebuilt from broken pieces, with patience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. And it's in second chances that we learn happiness is never too late. Beneath the golden sunset by the lake at the Willow Garden, Ethan Ward held his 3 children, Lily, Chloe, and Noah, close on their 6th birthday. In front of everyone, he claimed them as his own, erasing the shadow of 5 lost years. Once a man who chose career over love, Ethan had endured fierce confrontations and sleepless nights in hospital halls to earn back Natalie's trust and become the father his children deserved. Together, they rebuilt a family from broken pieces with unshakable patience and forgiveness. This story reminds us that every choice carries consequences. Mistakes may leave scars, but sincere love and steady action can always open the door to a second chance. Think about the people you love, the promises you can still keep, and the seeds of kindness you can plant in your own life. Share this story and help spread the message that happiness is never too late.